welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 415, and today's date is July 14th, 2014, and the title of this episode is The Islamic State Terrorism, Iran and Syria are now prepped for the false flag event. We can see what's happening right now. We see the Islamic State, and now we know that they are completely controlled and funded by the United States government, central bankers, Israel, and other Arab nations. They have been set upon a mission, and that mission is to completely disrupt what is going on in the Middle East. We see they've already created a caliphate, which anybody can just say, yes, I own all this. It doesn't mean they actually do. They already produced a passport. They already said they're creating their own currency. So they're using this to show the world that, yes, we do have Iraq and Syria, but they really don't. This is all propaganda right now. And the United States government, central bankers are using this propaganda to feed into fear in what is going on here. Of course, they had to increase the airline security because of this stealth bomb that they're creating. They're afraid that they'll be delivering this bomb via an airplane, and you can see all across the globe right now, well, all the private Western central bank countries are tightening down and making sure they have security in place. We also realize that Germany blessed the bail-in documents. They are getting prepared. The whole European nation, all the European nations are getting prepared for what is coming, and that is going to be bail-ins. The United States, the UK, Australia, Switzerland, and Canada already have theirs in effect, and you can see this is what they're going to use to rescue themselves from what is coming. And they already know the collapse is here and it is coming. They just need some huge event to cover this up, and this is what they're trying to do right now. They're already implicating other terrorist groups with the Islamic State, like Boko Haram. They're also saying the Islamic State is in Lebanon. It is in Yemen. And if you really step back and take a look, you can see that the Middle East, that all the different countries that they're talking about are the ones where the United States government, central bankers are having a problem keeping the people in line, using drone attacks on the tribes inside the countries, because they need to maintain the dollar and keep it propped up in all these countries. They know in the long run, they would not be able to do this. So this is why they needed to create another type of chaos going on. And we can see already that this is playing into their agenda of the next event. We already have the Fed out there telling us that they're going to completely exit the quantitative easing in October. We can see that this is a complete setup because we know that they are just maneuvering their bond purchasing over to Belgium, to Euroclear. They are making a huge amount of bond purchases, so we know for a fact they are really not tapering. It is an illusion, just like the rest of the economy is an illusion. Let's get into the economic collapse news, and we're going to go through what is going on in Israel, in the Middle East, but let's start off here in the United States. And what is happening here is that it seems like the institutional investors are completely dumping the stocks at this point, and what do we have? Well, we have the retail investors piling in, because what do they see? Wow, the stock market is rising. It hasn't fallen for quite a while. I really want to get in on this and make a lot of money. And this is normally what happens during the end period when the market's about to crash. All those companies and all those people who pumped it up start escaping and exiting the stock market. And we know this for a fact, and most of the institutional investors are the banks, a lot of hedge funds, and they're starting to dump the stocks right now, and the everyday person is coming in saying, oh, let me purchase that. And of course, they're purchasing it at the high end. The institutional investors are dumping it and cashing out and making quite a bit of money. So we can see this is happening right now, and we can see by all of this is that we're heading towards a time period where things are really going to start to fall apart. And we can see that these corporations are making sure that they are hedged against this, because they know exactly what's going on here way before every other person does. Just like the mortgage departments realized that the housing market wasn't going to make it. So back in August, September, October, going forward of 2013, they knew they didn't need a mortgage department. That's why they laid off tens of thousands of people, way ahead of what is going on now. And we have to remember that Obama was out there In August of 2013, he was in Phoenix letting everyone know this housing recovery is amazing. Look at this. We are rebounding. It looks great. And at the exact same time, the mortgage departments were laying off. Seems like there was something wrong there. Well, we know what's wrong. The Fed was pumping in billions of dollars into hedge funds, investment companies, having them purchase real estate, keep it off the market. If you rent it, fine. If you don't, who cares? Making sure the foreclosures aren't hitting the market, keeping the inventory off the market to make the prices rise. And what we're seeing right now are the prices are starting to come down. They're leveling off, and they're starting to fall. Right now, what's very interesting is that during the heyday of the real estate market, there was about 1.5 million construction workers lost their jobs during the recession. So during that period, there was a lot of people in construction. In 2008, 1.5 million lost their jobs. And ever since that period, now, if real estate is rebounding and they're building homes and they're constructing again, we would see a return of all these construction workers back into the market. But guess what? We only see about 80,000 construction jobs have been added back since the recovery began. So that just goes to show you there is absolutely no real estate recovery whatsoever. And right now, the Home Affordable Modification Program, HAMP, born at the height of the housing crisis in 2009, gave struggling homeowners the chance to modify their mortgages through a series of adjustments, most commonly interest rate relief that decreased the rate so as low as 2%. Banks received incentive payments from the government for each modified loan. But guess what's happening? Those homeowners that took advantage of the federal government emergency plan to help them stave off foreclosure during the housing crisis have a brand new problem. Well, the interest rate increase is coming for them. Banks began sending notices out in June, warning that their rates for these homeowners will soon rise, and with them monthly mortgage payments by an average of about $200, nearly a 25% increase. 4 states will be hit with half the nearly 800,000 mortgage payment increases overall. That is, of course, California, Illinois, Florida, and New York. And monthly payments will eventually rise to much more than they're paying now, which will reduce their disposable income, and it will make it much more difficult for all these people to go out and, guess what, purchase goods in retail. So we're going to see a complete collapse of retail. People are going to lose their homes because now they're going to have to make more money to afford their mortgage. And of course, they got comfortable in this lifestyle, paying this lower amount, and now the rates are going to go up. And this is going to make it more and more difficult as time goes on. Now, out in Phoenix, we have to remember, just like I just mentioned, President Obama was out there back in 2013 saying that the housing market is recovering. Look at Phoenix. It's fantastic. What we're seeing today is the complete opposite. Almost 1 year ago to date, we are seeing the housing market in Phoenix completely collapse. The percentage of residential properties purchased by investors continue to decline from 16.3% in April to 16.1% in May. Normal resales are down 2%. New homes down 4%. Investor flips down 53%. Short sales down 73%. Bank-owned homes down 20%. So what are we seeing here? We are seeing that houses under $150,000 are down 34%. Houses between $150,000 and $500,000 down by 11%. Sales down by 11%. Houses over $500,000 down by 13%. The Phoenix market is going absolutely nowhere. It is collapsing. We are going to see this happen in many different areas. We're going to see it in Florida. We're going to see it in New York. We're going to see it in Phoenix. We've already seen it in California, and it will spread to the rest of the country just like it did in 2008. We are heading down into the winter months. The summer is in the mid-range right now. Anyone that was going to sell, anyone that was going to buy, they're pretty much done because they want to purchase these homes so their kids can get into those schools before the school year. Usually by August it starts to really taper off, and that is the end of that, because once we get into fall and winter, the housing market is going to go completely fall apart, and there'll be no saving it whatsoever. And we have so many different factors coming in with these interest rates going up, regular interest rates going up. People are not going to be able to make it through this year. I mean, it's going to be very, very difficult, especially when we head towards Christmas season. I hate to say this, but many of the major corporations during this time period lay off people. They usually do it in the fall and in the spring, the early winter, spring, and it seems like there's going to be tons of layoffs coming up during this time period. Now, we understand that every single country is making sure that they have some type of insurance policy for when the dollar collapses. And what we're seeing right now is the Mexican financial leaders and politicians have been working to institute sweeping monetary changes that, if implemented, could unleash global power shift of epic proportions. The action set to unfold in Mexico, where many of its most influential and wealthy citizens are demanding the country abandon its fiat currency, the peso, and return to a silver standard. Now, if they go ahead and do this, what are the central bankers going to do? They don't like it when you get off the fiat currency and is backed by a precious metal. I mean, look, out in the Middle East, when Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi decided to sell their oil using a different currency, they went in and they invaded those countries and replaced the governments. When another country says, oh, you know what, we're going to back this with precious metal, other countries are going to start to follow, and this is going to pose a huge, huge problem, because now you're not going from peso to dollar, you're going from dollar to silver, and this is going to be a huge, huge difference. Now, we can see a lot of the World Bank, the IMF, the BIS, they're out there now giving warnings, saying, yeah, we are in a huge amount of trouble. The International Monetary Fund stresses the urgent need to carry out structural reforms to spur investment, employment, and productivity in the Eurozone. Why? Because the Eurozone is falling apart. Youth unemployment between 40 and 60%. Regular unemployment between 20 and 30%, and even higher in some countries. The debt load is unbearable. The austerity on the people is making it so they cannot start businesses or get jobs. It is falling apart. The IMF Executive Board also stressed that recovery levels are not sufficiently strong, financial markets remain fragmented, and borrowing costs are still high in distressed Eurozone economies. So we can see right now there are warnings coming out of the IMF, and of course there are warnings coming out of the BIS. And we can see right now they're saying, the head of the BIS is saying he's extremely concerned about rising debt levels and the current level of euphoria in the financial markets. He said that the international system is in many ways more fragile than it was in the build-up to the Lehman crisis. Debt ratios in the developed economies have risen by 20% points to 275% of GDP. We have a major problem, and they know it. This is why the Fed is out there trying to convince all the markets and the rest of the world that they are removing themselves from the stimulus, and they're exiting because they want to show everyone that everything is fine, to keep the illusion alive, so they can bring this event to cover up this economic collapse. This is exactly what they are doing. Now, on the southern borders, where we have all these child immigrants coming over, the aliens, most of them are not really they're children, they're teenagers. But what's very interesting is that a Fox News channel is reporting that the Border Patrol right now is removing 70% of their agents, and they're being pulled off of patrolling the border to handle the administrative paperwork needed to deal with the unfolding humanitarian crisis of tens of thousands of unaccompanied children. So we can see right now the border guards have left. I mean, this is a perfect setup. Have them do paperwork to handle the amount of of children coming over the border, so they cannot guard the border. I mean, this is a perfect setup to have everyone come across the border, have no guards there, and then have them protected by a law where they need to see an immigration judge before they're sent back. So this was completely planned. And right now, out of Texas, there was an ad placed in the Penny Saver newspaper in Marietta, California, seeking loving, compassionate parents to provide a loving home for illegal immigrant minors. Lisa Maloney Vinton, a Marietta resident, provided Breitbart, Texas, with the ad, and it says, "Help heal the wounds for children in foster care programs, including survivors of human trafficking and unaccompanied refugee minors." And it goes on to say, parents who offer up their homes could have a child placed in their home in as short as 45 days and be paid up to $6,000 per month. Cindy Lemos, another Marietta resident, "I called this afternoon and the gentleman I spoke to told me that they are receiving the illegal immigrants, but that none of them are under the age of 12. I asked him where all the younger children were. He told me he was wondering the exact same thing." So right now we're getting reports that these youths are not so young. They're much older. They're pretty much teenagers that are coming across. And we can see right now that they have been placing ads in Central America to have the kids come up here, placing ads here in the United States to give these children homes. And who is paying these families $6,000 a month? I mean, the government has money to pay for homes at $6,000 a clip, but they don't have the money to bring in more security guards. They have the money to protect the children in these bases with huge amounts of security guards, but they don't have the money to pay for the Border Patrol. Now, the Mexicans right now, they are filing a lawsuit. The infamous Mexican death train, also called the Beast, on which tens of thousands of illegal alien children from Central America are traveling through Mexico to the United States, is being targeted by criminal complaints from Mexican authorities for allegedly violating the civil rights of passengers. The Beast is owned and run by a Mexican wholly owned subsidiary of Kansas City Southern, a U.S. train company that acquired the Mexican equipment and routes in 2005 to create the NAFTA railroad. So right now this is a U.S.-owned train. Very interesting. Owned by the Kansas City Southern. And right now we can see what's happening here. The United States contracted with this company to bring these children across into Mexico, then up to the border. We have ads that are placed in El Salvador and other Central American countries to have their children be brought up here. And we can see the United States has financial type of aid going to El Salvador, and hooked to this aid is Monsanto seeds, and the El Salvador government does not want to accept these seeds because they're saying it will ruin their agriculture. So what have they done? They said, listen, we'll take your children, bring them up here, we'll give them a great life. Please take the Monsanto seeds. And you have to remember, Monsanto has many of the government officials in their back pocket. They're very strong, and we have to remember Russia, China, a lot of the European countries are rejecting the GMO seeds. So they need a place for these to go, and they're trying to pass them down into Central America. This is just another piece of the puzzle that we're trying to put together here. Now, Representative Bridenstine, he wanted to visit the children, and he said he was going to go back in on the 12th, and he actually went in there and he visited the children. And there are a good number of those children who were abused on the way to the United States by these transitional criminal organizations. They have to be paid in order to get them across, Bridenstine said. So he's saying there's these transitional criminal organizations. They have to be paid off to have these children come across Mexico into the United States. Now the question is, who is paying these criminals to allow these children through? I mean, it looks like these children have absolutely no money, and it seems like someone else is making the payments. We already know that it's an American corporation that owns the railroad. So who now is paying for these children to come across and pay off these criminal entities? Right now, the White House is predicting that there's going to be about 90,000 illegal miners expected by autumn now. So they're just continually having them come up, bombarding the system, and we know the president has a certain agenda in mind. He wants the immigration bill passed. He wants all these people spread around the United States. They will give them subsidies to join Obamacare. They will give the parents, the grandparents, once they bring them up here, work permits, hopefully to spur the economy, which is not going to do anything. And again, all you're going to see is a bump up of Obamacare, but again, the government is paying for that. So what kind of bump up is that? It really isn't anything. And you can see right now, this is all part of their major agenda, and also to blur the lines between the borders of the United States and Mexico and Central America. So you can see this has been planned from the beginning, and they're continuing with the plan. Now, out in Japan, it looks like they are planning to reopen a nuclear reprocessing plant, and it's stirring some concerns out there. If they reactivate this nuclear fuel reprocessing plant, they will be able to create about 2,000 atomic bombs, because they'll be able to produce enough plutonium to produce that amount. And of course, China is very worried about this. The people inside Japan are protesting against it, saying, no, we don't want to go in this direction. And of course, why would they want to do this? Well, we know World War III is coming. They're getting everything prepared. This is why Abe was out there redoing Article 9 of the Constitution. Instead of making Japan a pacifist nation, they want the ability to attack. This is why they built their first warship prior to World War II. They just built that. This is why they're having the U.S. move their base to a different location of Japan to bring in more sophisticated weapons. And now you see they're firing up this fuel processing plant, and they're going to create plutonium to make some type of atomic bombs in the future. Now, Morocco, they are on high alert. Morocco has put its security services on high alert after intelligence reports revealed a serious terror threat from Islamist militants returning home after fighting in Iraq and Syria. The threats are linked to the increasing number of Moroccans belonging to the organization in Syria and Iraq. So they're on high alert. All the European nations are on high alert. The United States are on high alert. They're putting everyone on high alert to make you believe that these terrorists are roaming around with these stealth bombs, going to blow up a plane inside a country. And we all know that this is all propaganda. It is a complete setup. Yes, there will be some type of an attack, but it won't come from the outside. It's coming from the inside, because when everything is failing, the economy is completely falling apart, they will need an event to blame it on another group, and this is exactly what they're prepping for right now. This is why you see all this propaganda on CNN, Fox News, ABC News, all of them. You see them continually pushing terror, terror, terror. This is why they're locking down the airports, making you have to be pat down even further, power up a cell phone, and they're continually taking away more of your rights during the same exact time, and making everyone feel and keep them in fear at this time. Now, out in Ukraine, what's happening there, it looks like Russia is allowing Turkey and the U.S. to fly over Russia, according to the Open Sky Treaty, and they're going to do this today. A joint mission from Turkey and the United States will make an observation flight over the territory of Russia between July 14th and 18th, and they're going to be using a Turkish surveillance aircraft CN-235 Persuader to make the observation. And they're just going to show the United States and Turkey, look, there are no troops amassing on the borders, nothing like that. And of course, we know that this is not happening, and in Ukraine, the puppet regime there continually uses the propaganda to convince everyone that Russia is getting ready to invade. But you have to remember, this puppet regime, which is controlled by the United States government, the central bankers, are trying to provoke Russia into doing something, and they will not stop. Right now, a plane of the Ukraine Air Force has pretty much flown into Russian airspace, people were very frightened and they ran away, and they're looking into the situation of why a plane actually flew into the airspace. We also have to remember that the Ukrainian forces went through the Russian border and brought a tank onto the Russian side, and they're trying to continually provoke that area. Recently what has happened is it seems like the Ukrainian forces are now shelling the Donetsk town, and there's two Donetsks. One is in Ukraine, one is right over the border in Russia. And this one, when they say Donetsk, was in Russia. So it looks like Ukraine fired multiple shells into this person's home, and this was on Russian territory. So we can see right now that they're continually aggressing and pushing the agenda. Of course, Poroshenko saying, no, it wasn't us. I don't know where that came from. And we can see with everything that they're doing is they will not stop until they have Russia coming into Ukraine. This is what the United States central bankers want. This is what they always wanted. Ever since Crimea and the southeast section had this referendum, their whole goal was take these areas by force, and if you can, provoke Russia into invading, because this would start World War III and solve a lot of our problems. Now, Russia is out there, and they're saying, well, we're considering a surgical strike on Ukraine, not an invasion, if this continues. Moscow is considering a surgical retaliatory strike on the Ukrainian territory after the standoff has led to first civilian victims among Russians on Russia's territory. Our patient is not boundless, the source told the newspaper, stressing that this means not a massive action, but exclusively targeting single strikes on positions from which the Russian territory is fired at. So you can see right now they are continually pushing, and of course Russia's out there saying, listen, if this keeps up, we will have to make a move. And if they do make a move, if they actually do it, the United States is going to have this all over every single corporate media news wire saying that Russia is invading Ukraine, and this will kick off the next world war. And again, they don't care where they kick it off. It makes no difference to them because the players are all the same. So right now, Poroshenko, he's changing up his military tactics at this point in East Ukraine. The president noted the need of several changes in tactics that would narrow the zone of conducting the anti-terrorism operations. He's looking to strengthen the border right now because he realizes as he keeps provoking, they need to set up and strengthen the border just in case Russia decides to do something. Okay, now as we know, the Middle East is in complete chaos, and they're trying to link all these different minor terrorist groups into the Islamic State because they want to make this a wide range so they can go into almost any area. And this is their agenda. And we understand in Nigeria, they tried with Boko Haram to say they're a terrorist, they kidnap girls, and guess what? That couldn't get any traction. The story fell apart. So they're continually using this propaganda, and now what they're saying is that the Nigerian Boko Haram radicals has vowed support for the Sunni Islamic State. So you can see right now they are linking each of these countries, these terrorist groups, into the Islamic State because this will make it easier for the United States central bankers to get into each one of these areas and say, guess what? We have terrorists running rampant all in this area. We need to do something before they hit the United States. And of course, once they say that, you know they're going to hit the United States. Now, we have the Iran P5+1 talks going on at this time, and we can see that the Secretary of State John Kerry is saying that we still have significant gaps, and the interim deal comes up in 6 days. And we can see right now that Iran says if they continually push excessive demands on Iran, Iran's going to say, you know what? We can't meet all these demands because these are not part of the original P5+1 talks. So this is getting out of hand at this time, and we have to remember Obama has this agreement under lock and key. Only a certain number of people are allowed to go in there and see it. You have to sign in, leave your camera phone, you have to go into a certain room, you're not allowed to remove it, make copies of it, and we can see right now, and which I always believed, their whole agenda was not their nuclear weapons. They could care less about that. Their agenda was trying to get into their banking system. They had the IMF come down, check out the banking system. They wanted to get in there. They wanted to control the sale of oil. They wanted to put their oil sales on the U.S. dollar, and I believe this is what they've been trying to do from the beginning. And this whole nuclear deal of how much nuclear plutonium and uranium and everything else that they're creating is just a cover. So this is what people believe, because you have to remember, going back 30 years now, ever since the central bankers were kicked out of Iran, and they've placed sanctions on them ever since, they've been telling us that they're going to have a nuclear weapon 3 to 5 months away. And this is over 30 years now. So, and they're going to use it at any minute. And this story has really gotten old, and they're still trying to use it, but guess what? It's not working anymore. So they're trying a whole new tactic. And this whole peace deal, I don't believe it's going to work. It might. But as of right now, it seems like they continually add more and more demands. Right now, Congress is saying that they're not looking to extend the interim deal, and it looks like there's 6 days until it comes up. And during this time period, what are we seeing? Well, we have Israel bombarding Gaza right now, and of course these 3 teenagers were most likely a false flag event, which will allow Israel into Gaza. And you can see right now they're using this technique of warning the people there. They're dropping a first explosive. They're calling up. They're emailing. And this really doesn't make any sense to me, because if you're really looking for terrorists and you're looking for the people that did this and destroy the military rocket launchers, why are you going after each one of the homes? Now, of course, they're using the excuse, like the United States government used this, that they're going after the terrorists, and it just happens to be civilians in this. But the story doesn't make sense, because they're allowing the people to leave beforehand. So what are they doing? They are bulldozing Gaza. They're destroying each one of the buildings. They're flattening it. Why? Because they want the Palestinians completely out of this area. The big question is why? Well, the first thing we have to realize is that Netanyahu right now is now linking Hamas to Iran. He's saying that Iran now is financing Hamas. So they're trying to create this link, because when this interim deal runs out, they want to go into Iran. Not just Israel, United States, central bankers. This is part of the bigger plan. And he's saying that he's also using, we can't let Iran get nuclear weapons, and he's been saying this forever. So what they're doing right now is they're laying the groundwork. They're prepping this entire situation. So we have the P5+1 talks. Looks like they're stalling right now. We see them completely leveling Gaza, making the link to Iran, that Iran is funding Hamas. And there's a Norwegian doctor out there. This is renowned Norwegian doctor Mads Gilbert on Sunday accused the Israeli army of using internationally banned weapons in its ongoing offensive against the Gaza Strip. Gilbert told a press conference that examinations of the bodies of the Palestinian victims showed that they had been subjected to internationally banned weapons. And we also see Israel saying that they've claimed to shot down a drone from the skies above its southern coastline. The unmanned aircraft, which Israel says was launched from Gaza and shot down with a Patriot missile near the city of Ashdod, is the first weapon of its kind Israel has encountered in this conflict, and they're linking this to Iran, that Iran has designed and created this type of drone Hamas is using. Iran is funding Hamas, so they're continuing with the link. Now, they have a certain things that they're looking to do here, and this is why they're in Gaza. First, what they would like to do is they would like to join up with Kurdistan. They get a lot of their oil from the Kurds, so does Turkey. They would like Kurdistan to splinter apart from Iraq, and they would like to place bases in there and point their missile silos towards Iran. Now, the other thing is the bringing down of all these buildings and leveling Gaza and warning the people, because they don't know where the terrorists. I mean, the terrorists, when they warn and they get the pamphlets and they get the emails, they can take their missiles, they can take all what they have and move it to a different location. So this, to me, does not make sense of just destroying buildings one after another and after another. What does make sense to me is this information, that there's 122 trillion cubic feet of gas, plus the potential of 1.6 billion barrels of oil in the Levant Basin spread over the territorial waters of Israel, Syria, Lebanon, and Cyprus, and of course Gaza. Now, of course, these waters are right on Gaza, on the coastline, and Israel can't access them without removing Hamas, without removing the people in Gaza. So what they're doing right now is they're bombing and leveling off Gaza, hopefully to force the people out of this region and Israel to come in and take this area. They then would have access to all of this trillion cubic feet of gas and 1.6 billion barrels of oil in this area. And this is the real reason why they're trying to get into this area. And the secondary reason is, of course, to start this event and kick it off and link all these different areas to make sure when this event starts, the United States, the central bankers, the Arab countries, the private West central bankers, all understand that it's coming from Syria, Iran, the Islamic State, that this is the area they need to go in and go after. So all of this is being done, and everything right now is being linked together, and this is part of a broader, fuller plan, because we understand the collapse is coming. They need a way to cover up this entire thing, and this is why all this is happening. Now, to get into Lebanon, of course, they're saying that the Islamic State is in there, suicide bombings happening in there, and also right now there are unidentified fighters in Lebanon, and they're firing rockets against Israel. So there are people inside Lebanon. Of course, they can't identify them, and this is probably another false flag event where they're having either Mossad agents go into Lebanon, having them fire back into Israel to bring Lebanon into the mix. And this is to create chaos throughout the region. So there's many, many different plans going on here all at once. Now, Israel right now is preventing the UN officials from entering Gaza. They don't want them in there because what is going on? You can see right now that a lot of Palestinians have died in this region. I believe there's no deaths for Israel right now. It's all on the Palestinian side, and it seems very interesting because if we look at the Ukraine viewpoint of what's going on there, we see the anti-terrorism forces heading into the civilian areas, and they're bombarding the civilian areas. It looks almost exactly the same in Israel, where you have, the Israeli government, the central bankers, completely bombarding the area of the Palestinians. Now, we can see right now this is for a bigger plan than just, these 3 teens that died. This was the false flag that led into this because they needed a reason to get in there. Now, out in Libya, what we're seeing is things are completely not going well for the Libyan government. The tribes in Libya are taking back the country. Of course, they're trying to link this with the Islamic State because they need all of these countries linked together to say terrorism is running rampant and they're 10 times worse than Al-Qaeda. This way, the United States can, with the central bankers and other countries, they would be able to get into this area and maintain complete control of all of this because they are losing control because all these tribes are starting to rise up. We have in Iraq, we have the Sunni people, which is separate and apart from the Islamic State, rising up, taking control of Iraq and wanting to overthrow Maliki. We have the tribes in Libya. We have the tribes in Yemen. And everyone is making their move at this time. And the United States government, they do not have the resources to keep this in check right now because the puppet governments are in each one of these countries and they're losing the battle. Right now it looks like the airport in Libya has been closed down, and it looks like the Libyan government is not really doing well in this area. But we have that rogue general in Libya, and he has amassed about 70,000 in his forces in the war against Al-Qaeda. Now, what's very interesting is, where is this guy getting the money? Because he is paying about $1,500 a month for each one of the warriors that he brings on. So where is he getting funding for this operation? Of course, he worked for the CIA. Most likely the U.S. government, central bankers, they're trying to use every single asset they possibly can to control what is going on, and we're seeing complete chaos. Now, Eric Holder is out there, and he's saying that he has new intelligence reports indicate that Yemeni bomb makers are joining terrorists in Syria to build new types of virtually undetectable bombs. Now, which we knew, but he's making the links with the terrorists in Syria, with bomb makers in Yemen. We have Israel making connections with Iran to Hamas. They're linking all of this together because they want everyone to believe that these terrorists are taking over all these regions. Iran is behind it. These interim deals are ending, and the whole thing is just going to blow up. The economy is failing, and everything is just completely haywire and in complete chaos. But he went on to say that Holder called the prospect more frightening than anything I've ever seen as Attorney General. This is a situation that we can see developing, and the potential that I see coming out, the negative potential I see coming out of the facts in Syria and Iraq now are quite concerning. The Yemen-based bomb builders behind the underwear bomb plot in 2009 have traveled to Syria to meet the members of the Islamic State. The extremist group, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, which has captured recent international attention, thus far appears focused on cementing its territorial gains in the Middle East. However, I think it's just a matter of time before they start looking outward and start looking at the West and at the United States in particular to hit. So we can see right now he is really paving the way for this next event. They are linking all of this together. Israel wants the gas that's off the shores of Gaza. They want the people out of there. They're destroying all the structures. They could care less about the people in there. And again, this always goes back to the central bankers, the globalists, the elite. They don't care about the people. Look in Ukraine. Look in the Middle East countries. Look what Israel's doing to Palestine in Gaza right now. It doesn't really matter. Get the people out of there. Destroy the structures. Israel's going to move in, and they have the gas and the oil fields. In the meantime, they're implicating Iran. They're building a base in Kurdistan, pointing the missiles at Iran. We see here in the United States, the central bankers are making the case where these bombers, these terrorists, are joining up with people in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq. They're going to hit the United States. We see Poroshenko up in Ukraine provoking Russia nonstop. They want Russia to come in. They're devastating the people in the southeastern region. They're even sending shells over into Russia to have Russia come in. So you can see they are really pushing this agenda, and we should really see this escalate as we get closer to and closer to fall, because they need this event to occur, and this is exactly what they're planning on. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.